artist! So for our project this week, we are going to be making seascapes inspired by the artist Robin Mead. And when you look at mine, you can see that it has an ocean. So that's why it's called a seascape and not a landscape, because it includes the sea. So let's look at some options for our project this week. So when we look at Robin Mead's work, she always includes the ocean, but she might put flowers in the front or the foreground of the picture, but somewhere in it is the ocean. There's going to be something in the background too, so probably hills and some kind of sunset or sunrise. But let's look at another one. So another option for a seascape is you could do buildings. You could put a city on the side, and I'll show you how in a couple minutes. And then you could also put trees. So I'll show you how to do that too. And these pictures, something happened with my ink. This is supposed to be pinkish red, and I guess my printer wasn't working, so it looks kind of grayish purple. But in my finished example, we see a lot of contrast used between warm and cool colors. So you're gonna think about where your cool colors will be and your warm colors will be, and how to make each part of the landscape stand out. So in the video, you're gonna see me do a couple examples of Robin Mead's work. So you could pick and choose kind of what you want to include in your landscape. So you might like this idea with flowers in the front and hills and the sea right here. Maybe you'd want to include the buildings. I'm gonna show you how to do that. Maybe you have another idea from a landscape that you looked up online. That's okay too, it's your art. All right, so for your materials today, you're gonna need a piece of paper, you'll need a pencil, an eraser, and a black permanent marker like a Sharpie. And then for coloring materials, in the video, you're gonna see me using a variety of things. So Robin Mead usually uses watercolors on her work, but if you don't have watercolors, that's okay. I'm gonna show you how to make your markers turn into watercolor by painting over them. So if you have washable markers, get those out for this project. I'm also going to use some crayons to fill in some sections, and I'm going to use a little bit of regular watercolor paint as well. And then you're going to need a water cup and a brush if you're adding water today. And if you don't have anything to paint with, that's okay. Just go ahead and color it in with what you have. So who is Robin Mead? Robin Mead is a self-taught contemporary artist from Georgia. Contemporary means she is currently creating art today. Robin Mead's artwork is inspired by her love of nature and color. She loves to include bright and bold colors in her work, usually done with watercolor. She is also fascinated with line and uses black lines to add control to her colorful masterpieces. Here's a quote from her website. "The bold black lines, squiggles, or doodles come from a feeling I have deep within that screams control, perfection, and order. The beautiful, vibrant colors come from a light, heartfelt, and spiritual place that whispers wild, crazy, and chaotic. The interplay between control and chaos is where the magic happens, and that can only come from within each one of us." So before we start working today, I'm going to show you the different parts of a landscape. So in a landscape, we have the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. And then we also have the horizon line. So when you're looking at a landscape, you're looking at something called perspective. Perspective is the view that you have from where you are. So the parts that are in the foreground are always going to be the biggest. The things in the middle ground will be medium-sized, and in the background, things will be the smallest because they are further away. And the horizon line is the line where the land meets the sky, or in a seascape where the sea meets the sky, depending on the picture. So I'm getting my materials ready here. One thing that you might want to do is have an example of what you want to draw. So here I have some printed examples, but you could also just look up online some examples of Robin Mead's work. So the first thing that we're going to draw is the horizon line. Remember, that is where the land meets the sky or the sea meets the sky. And then here I'm showing you how to draw waves in the style of Robin Mead. Robin Mead uses these really swirly, spiral, wavy lines to create the sea or the ocean. Now, when I'm drawing my spiral and wavy lines, I'm thinking about the direction that the sea is going in and where the waves are getting bigger, where is the water moving to, and I'm trying to draw my lines in that direction to show movement. So think about where the water is going. It's also draw your really lines important when you're drawing to draw lightly with your pencil so that you can erase things if you need to move the parts of your seascape around a little bit. So I finished drawing most of the waves, but I've decided that I want to include flowers in this picture, and I want them to be in the foreground or in the front. So they are going to be the biggest thing in my seascape. Now when I'm adding flowers, my pencil lines are overlapping here with some of the waves and some of the flower petals. And that's okay because I'm going to outline this with a Sharpie later, and I can erase the pencil lines that I don't need. This is another reason why it's really important to draw lightly with your pencil. So here's another option for a seascape. So in this picture, I wanted the flowers to be all the way across the bottom of the page, and they will be in the front of the seascape or in the foreground. So they're going to be the biggest thing in my picture. So if you want to have flowers first in the beginning of your seascape, this might be how you'd want to start your drawing. Now, when you finish drawing, the next step is to outline with a Sharpie or a black permanent marker. So Robin Mead often draws designs in parts of her landscapes. So here I'm drawing some line designs in the sky. We might also see some designs in flowers or maybe in the hills to show texture. So look at your seascape and see where you can add some line designs. Another idea is including a city. So along with drawing the ocean, you may want to also show that there's a city. So maybe this is a seaside town or a big city that is on the water. So I'm pretty much finished with my city scene seascape picture, but I decided that I wanted to include some flowers as well. So maybe you're thinking that too. So if you do, you can erase some of the water lines and you can draw your flowers in the foreground or in the front. And remember, they will be the biggest thing in your picture. So they're going to be bigger than the waves and they're going to be bigger than the buildings too. Now for my last idea, I'm going to show you guys how to draw a row of trees in your seascape. So maybe instead of buildings, you were looking at drawing trees. So here's how you could do that. And this is the one that I think I'm going to continue working on. So I'm going to go ahead and add color to this in a little bit. Now let's talk about our coloring materials. So I have crayons, washable markers, watercolors, a water cup, and a paintbrush. And the first thing I'm going to do is separate the warms and the cools, so the warm and cool colors. You guys should know this, but let's just review it. So red, orange, yellow, pink are all warm colors. Green, blue, and purple are all cool colors. And when we look at Robin Mead's work, she always uses contrast between warm and cool colors. Now, Robin Mead usually paints with watercolors in her artworks. So I'm going to show you a way to turn washable markers into a type of watercolor if you don't have a watercolor set at home. So what you'll need for this is washable markers, a paintbrush, and something to put water in. So what you'll want to do with your marker is outline the shapes with the color that you want it to be. So for the waves, I'm outlining the spiral shapes and the wavy lines, and I'm not outlining every line, but I'm outlining most of them. Because the ocean can be kind of a bluish green color, I decided to add a little bit of green as well. So I'm adding a little green outline to the wavy lines, and that should blend into a turquoise or a blue-green when I add water later. Now the next thing I'm going to add is some crayon. So I'm coloring in some parts of the waves with crayon, but notice that I'm not coloring in every little space. So I'm just kind of roughly coloring with my crayon to add a little bit of color and texture. If I colored in the entire space with crayon, and then I went to paint with watercolors, or I went to paint over my marker lines, there wouldn't be anywhere for the color to go because crayon resists water because it's wax. It creates a wax resist. So you do want to leave a little bit of white space around your crayon. Now I'm going to show you how to turn your marker lines into watercolor paint. So I'm painting over my marker lines with water and a paintbrush. And when I do that, you can see the blue and the green blending together to make a turquoise. Remember that you can paint right over your crayon and it will stay on the paper because it's creating a wax resist. You might want to test your markers before you add them to your final artwork and make sure that they are water-based or washable because a permanent marker will not work and will not turn into a watercolor. Now I'm going to finish the rest of my seascape. So I'm going around and outlining all of the shapes with my markers, and then I'm filling in some of the space with crayon. I'm going to go ahead and do this to all of my picture, and then I'm going to do the water step. It's easier to use all of your dry materials first and then paint with water because it's hard to work around a wet surface. To add some finishing touches, I'm going to paint with my watercolors in areas where I felt like the color was a little bit light. All right, I hope you had fun creating your seascape inspired by the artist Robin Mead. I can't wait to see what you create.